Hello, I think I'm live. Sorry about messing up that the thumbnail with the time the time allocation. I put in I must have put in the wrong numbers. The software makes you put it in 24-hour time. I suspect what I did, I wasn't thinking, and I put in instead of 1800, I put in 1600. But looks like some people are finding it anyway. Hopefully, I was surprised when I clicked in here to see the chat was so busy already. It seems like a lot of people showed up at 4 o'clock. I'm sorry about that. But we'll start as per usual at in a couple of minutes at 6 EST. Someone's already asked a question here. Did Buddhism explain magic later on as it moved around as mind creating reality, like voodoo dolls, for example? I don't think there's ever been anything like voodoo dolls in Buddhism. What you might call magic is probably the closest thing are the idis, the supernatural or supernormal powers, mind powers like reading minds or changing external reality, like walking on water or walking through walls. Okay, so let's start. We're going to do the Devas who delight in creation and those who delight in the creation of others. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. So we're continuing on with a tour through the realms of existence, and today we've reached the summit of the sense desire realm, the Kama Bhumi, that stretches all the way from the hell realms through the animals, humans, and devas. It's a very vast realm altogether with all these subgroups. It's the most varied kind of possible forms of existence and very complicated. And all these realms have in common the characteristic of the beings who dwell there primarily relate to the world through the five senses, five physical senses. And their internal life is also governed by the five senses in terms of what they desire, what they think about, what they fear, and so on. It's all through the five senses, or relates to the five senses. Now, the very peak of this realm, the fifth and sixth heavens, which I'm going to deal with today, are the realm of the Nimanarati devas, and then the highest one, the sixth heaven, is the realm of the Parinimata Vasavati devas. The Nimanarati devas, and the name means they delight in creation. The Nimana part is a grammatical form of the noun nimitta. A nimitta, you may be familiar with its use in terms of meditation. is a mind-created object. Like if you see a disc or a star or something like that in your meditation and focus on it, that becomes your nimitta. But it has a more general meaning as anything created by the mind. And we have, for example, stories of the Buddha creating illusory duplicates of himself, nimitta Buddhas. For example, when he taught in Tao Thinks of Heaven, every day he would go back to the earth to walk for alms for his daily meal. While he was gone, the teaching continued using the vehicle of a nimitta Buddha. The Devas in this realm, the Nimanarati Devas, they have the ability to create anything they wish with their mind. So they feel their existence is entirely fluid. It's entirely under their control. Whatever they imagine manifests as a reality for them. So there's a number of ways of looking at this. You can think of this as a kind of extended lucid dreaming, highly lucid, 100% lucid dreaming. And it's very extended. The lifespan of these devas in human terms is said to be 2 billion years, so they're very long lived, and they dwell in palaces and gardens and things that they've created with their mind. So it's also, you can think of it as a kind of continuous creative play. Now, another way of looking at this is that in the lower Deva realms, the buildings and the parks and so on are said to be created by the karma of those beings. For example, if some human being has made good merit and takes rebirth in one of the heaven worlds, the palace or the vimana that he moves into will be there before him. It was created by his good karma on earth. It just manifests, and then he just moves into it. So everything, and karma is ultimately, according to Abhidhamma, karma is ultimately made in the mind. So in the lower heaven worlds, also things are created by their mind, but not consciously and deliberately. Now, take this even further. This idea, even our existence in the human realm is arguably, if you get right down into the underlying metaphysics of things, it's mind created, because our experience is entirely a result of our, or not entirely a result, but in part always a result of our past karma. It's always one constituent in experience. I've thought that of another way of thinking about the Nimanarati Devas in terms of a modern explanation is that they have the power consciously to collapse the wave function in any way they wish. So the wave function in quantum mechanics is highly probabilistic, and it has, at the macro level, it has very little flexibility, because the sum total of all the probabilities of these micro events add up to an almost certainty of occurrence. But it may be that in this realm that's not entirely true, and that using the observer effect, they collapse the wave function in any direction they choose, so they can create macro level objects with their mind. That's kind of a speculative explanation. So this is the fifth highest heaven, the beings of delight in creation, but there's still one level still within the sense sphere above them, which is the level of the Parinimata Vasawati Devas, the Devas who delight in the creation of others. So they don't deliberately create anything with their mind. They just enjoy the creations from the fifth level. And they don't even have to ask for it or order it. The Devas below intuit what would please the higher Devas, and they create these objects for them. It's said in one commentary, it's like a skillful cook for a king. He doesn't always ask the king what you want for dinner. He intuits what would be most pleasing to the king and serves it up. So there's also a number of ways of looking at this relationship. From the point of view of the Devas that delight in creation, you could think of it for them as a kind of a religious practice, a kind of worship, because they're serving the higher gods. So they're serving beings higher than themselves by creating delightful sense objects for them. And for the Vasawati Devas, and the full name is Parinimata Vasawati, the beings that have, the literal translation is they have power over the creation of others. Vasawati means having power or dominion. So they're at the very peak of the sense desire realm. And their king is named Vasawati, and he's the supreme being of the entire sense desire realm. So one way of looking at them is as, powerful overlords, but another way is to see them at the very peak of sensuality. They're almost like useless, self-indulgent beings that make no effort. They just enjoy. So this becomes the end point of sensuality. And I remarked before how as you go up in these realms, the sensual nature of the realm becomes more refined, less gross, and more subtle, until at the very peak here we're closer to the someone says there's no connection. I'll keep going and see if anybody else notices there's a problem. Let me know in the chat. Maybe I should put something in the chat. Hang on. Okay, so where was I? I was talking about the subtlety of the sense experience at these higher realms. And one way this is explicitly, okay, people are saying the connection is good, so I'll keep going. One way this is explicitly described is in terms of the sexuality of these beings. One of the characteristics of the sense desire realm is the division of beings into two genders, and their attraction of the genders for each other and sexual relations. And in the heaven worlds, this is true also, but as you go up higher, the expression of physical desire becomes more and more refined, so that at these two highest realms, the beings in the fifth realm the male and female enjoy sensuality merely by gazing at one another and smiling. So there's no physical contact. And in the highest, the sixth realm, they don't even smile. They just gaze into each other's eyes and they bliss out. You know? So we would not we would not even see this as you know, as a strong form of sensuality, but it's actually the peak of the sense experience, most refined kind of experience of sexuality. And we only have this description for sexual relations, but I think we could probably extrapolate and think that everything else in these realms, from the music to the food and the dwelling places and the clothing and everything, is also increasingly refined and subtle. One other feature of the Parinimata Vasavati realm needs a mention. It's said that in 1/4 of this realm, Mara rules as like a rebel prince. So he doesn't recognize the authority of Vasavati, and he considers himself to be the peak of the sensual desire realm. And Mara is a character who shows up, of course, a lot in the Buddhist scriptures, trying to tempt the Buddha before his enlightenment and bother him afterwards. Could merit a whole discussion about Mara. Is sometimes compared to the Christian devil, but that's not really a very good comparison, because for one thing, Mara is not in hell. He's in the highest sensual heaven. He's a very refined, high-level Dewa, but he's got an arrogance and a pride, and he doesn't want his mission, self-defined mission, is that he does not want any beings to escape from samsara, and particularly to escape from the sense desire realm. So he's always seeking to either frighten or tempt people on the path. You know? So he's trying to keep us trapped in samsara. So I think that's all I need to say about these two realms. And next time we'll be moving on we'll leave the sense desire realm and we'll be looking at the Rupa Bhumi, the realm of form, which is entirely different. So I'll leave it there, and please, if you have anything you'd like to discuss, like me to comment on, or questions, please put it in the chat, and I'll keep going for a while. Let's see, there's already some. I'll just back up the chat a bit and see what's there, see if there's anything to discuss. Does Buddhism have meditations to send compassion on infinite beings so they're liberated? That's what I mean by magic. Well, metta, you can extend metta to dewas, and there's no reason not to, but I wouldn't call that magic. In the causal chain of events, can effects have multiple direct prior causes, or only one event arise at each moment? In reality, all objects are simultaneously influenced by many forces, but by looking upon events unfold moment by moment, we can see what is causing the next event is the net sum of all the events from prior moment, forming a single cause. Is it sensible otherwise? Actually, it's explicitly stated in the one Abhidhamma text that nothing arises without a cause, and nothing arises from a single cause. Causation is extremely complex, and every event that occurs has, in reality, a vast number, perhaps an infinite number of contributing causes. But these are, of course, not all of the same weight. And we can analyze causation in different categories. Predominant cause and proximate cause are the two most important. Predominant cause meaning whichever past event has the strongest influence, and proximate is whichever event is immediately prior in the chain of causation. So it's a lot more complex than just A causes B causes C. It's actually an infinite network, but we can simplify things, by focusing on the most important or strongest causes. Okay, Mara is more similar to the Gnostic demiurge, although he is not eternal. Rather, there are an infinite series of Maras. Yes, that's an interesting comparison. It hadn't occurred to me before to compare Mara to the Gnostic demiurge. I think a difference would be the demiurge actually does do subcreation, but the Mara doesn't actually create anything on this earth. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from. There is some comparison. And there is an infinite. He's not immortal. There's no immortal beings in the Buddhist cosmology. Mara is another case where there are where the name Mara is more like a title, and just like Saka or any of the other devas. When one Mara is finished his time, another Mara appears to take his place. There's a sutta that describes Moggallana's encounter with Mara, and Moggallana tells Mara a story about in the ancient past when Moggallana himself was reborn as a Mara. In Abhidhamma, karma is created in the mind. What about in the suttas? Well, I don't think in the suttas you find such a technical description of how karma works. When the Buddha talks about karma in his discourses, it's most often in a very general sense, and is almost always in relation to states of rebirth. So he talks about what kind of life you lead to be reborn as an animal or as a human or as a deva. But the kind of technical analysis of karma on a moment-by-moment basis and how it works is found in the Abhidhamma. Okay, someone says, referring back to somebody else's question that probably was posted during the 4 o'clock slot, how does one prevent a strong sense of nibbida from turning into vibhava tanha? Yeah, that is actually a very good question, because that is a challenge that you face on the path. And if you look, I would recommend to start with to look at the stages of insight. Find Mahasi Sayadaw's Progressive Insight and read that. You can find that online as a PDF, which explains it in some detail, the stages the mind goes through. Now, nibbida is a state of mind where one is disillusioned or disenchanted with samsara, but one has not yet seen past that. So it can be a difficult passage, and in the end, you just have to go through that with clear insight, seeing, so you can see how it arises when you begin to see the true nature of samsara. You begin to see the 3 characteristics strongly, and you see everything's impermanent, everything's breaking up. There's nothing to rely on. Everything is suffering. Nothing is substantial. No place to stand. It's all falling apart. And that should arouse a disillusionment with samsara. But the danger is, as you say, it turning into negative mind states like vibhavatanha or aversion. The vibhavatanha means the desire not to exist. But non-existence is not an answer. You have to get through that with clear insight. Just keep looking. If it becomes too much to bear, you can don't back off completely, but turn for a while to uplifting meditations like metta or Buddha Nusati, Deva Nusati, before making another push. But in the end, you have to just go through it, and you do come out on the other side, and then it's very peaceful. It's like a safe haven once you get to the other side of nibbida. What's the precise definition of cetana? If something is truly volitional, then it must be uncaused. No, I don't. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding there between about the nature of causality. When something is conditioned, it's not the same as being like hard determinism. It's not strongly fixed. But it doesn't arise without a cause, meaning that it does have past causes, but then going forward there's some freedom. So I think the mistake is looking forward rather than backward in understanding causality. Think of it more as conditioned rather than caused. There's a set of conditions that allows possibilities, and for a conscious being like a human, there is the element of cetana or volition or will, that you can take that previous conditioning and go from there. But because the cetana itself is conditioned, its range of possibility is limited, but it's not strictly determined. And with spiritual advancement, there's more range of possibilities open up. Can devas in this realm make merit? Which realm can one potentially make? Which realm, I suppose you mean? Which realm can one potentially make the most merit? One can make the most merit in the human realm. That's clear. The devas tend to be overwhelmed with sense pleasure, and they don't think of making merit. But it is possible for them to make merit. And there's stories about devas, for example, helping humans on the earth in one way or another, either guiding them on the spiritual path or even helping them in more mundane ways, like Sakka. In a number of stories, he rescues humans that are in trouble. There's devas that rescue humans that are shipwrecked, for example. So it's possible for devas to make merit, but it's not common. And I think that devas in these higher realms, they generally don't bother with the lower realms at all. They're not really concerned. The devas in the realms of creation wouldn't, except for Mara, who's kind of a busybody. They wouldn't be concerned about what's going on down here. Did the Buddha discover things like dependent origination and anatta before or after his night of awakening? Well, we have a couple of different accounts of the Buddha's enlightenment night in the Pali sources. And one of them emphasizes his contemplation of the dependent origination, which led to his enlightenment. So by working out the details of dependent origination, it led to his enlightenment. The insight into anatta, I think, came with Buddhahood. the real understanding of emptiness. Because it's also said elsewhere that for an in-depth understanding of anatta, one must have at least the stage of sotapanna to understand sakaya ditti and see through it. And even then, only the arahant sees through asmimana. And the teaching of anatta is the most subtle and profound teaching of the Buddha, and it's the one that's characteristic of Buddhism, in that you don't find it in other teachings. Why doesn't Mara want people to escape samsara? I think it's because he imagines himself to be the supreme overlord of samsara, and he sees as a diminution of his power, or his people are escaping from it. I kind of lost my track in the chat here. Give me a moment to scroll back and find it again. Does the flow of time, or rather our perception of it, follow a causal path, arising moment by moment, with only one moment arising in an instant? It's the effect of the previous moment and simultaneously the cause for the next moment. Yeah, we experience time in a linear fashion, a moment by moment. And the dhammas that arise in each moment has its proximate cause in the dhammas that have arisen in the previous moment. I heard Ajahn Martin say that he made sufficient merit to guarantee parents' rebirth at heaven realm, but didn't specify. Can we, as laypersons, what can we do as laypersons to guarantee rebirth of our loved ones in the heaven realms, please? I think that what Ajahn Martin is referring to is a common belief in Thailand, that when a young man ordains as a monk, some of the merit is transferred to his parents and guarantees their rebirth into heaven. You don't really find this in the original Buddhist teachings. It's a kind of a common or folk belief in Thailand. Do you think Jungian synchronicities, auspicious events, are often linked to dewas, maybe physical manifestation of karmic results? I would tend to think more that they're the result of karma. That in the complex network of cause and effect, one stream of which is always karma, the causes can sometimes come together. The constellation of causes can sometimes come together in ways that seem mysterious and seem like amazing coincidences. But which we can't with our mind. We can't understand all the causes of any event. But if we had that superhuman insight, we would see that it's actually a natural unfolding of all these causes. In Theravada practice countries, they usually share merit with heavenly beings. Yes, we include that. Sharing merit with beings in all beings in all realms, and there's a chant that lists all the beings you're sharing merit with, and includes all the dewas and so on. Usually dewas from which realms to help the humans who share merit with them. I think it would be primarily the lower heavens, Chatuma, Rajaka, and Tawatingsa, because they still have a foot on the earth, so to speak. They're not as remote from us. Isn't karma made on the volitional aggregate? Aren't aggregates in the suttas? Yes, aggregates are in the suttas, but they're not described in such detail as in the Abhidhamma. For lay people, is there such a thing as healthy sexuality? Or is sexuality always tied up with tanha, and lay people just engage in it because they're not fully on the path? Well, first of all, there's no demerit in sexual activity for a layperson as long as it's within the bounds of the precept. The precept for laypersons is kamesum michachara veramani, to refrain from sexual misconduct, which is defined. There's a definition of it that really it's fairly liberal. It really just means not practicing adultery. So if you have sexual relations, if you're in a relationship, married or otherwise, if it's just an emotional, one-on-one committed relationship, and you have sex outside of that, then you're hurting the other person. You're causing suffering. Likewise, if you intrude in someone else's relationship. But beyond that, beyond the limits of the precepts, overindulgence in like promiscuity would be spiritually harmful, just because it's binding you more and more to the sense desire path, sense desire realm, making it harder for you to see beyond that. I think a healthy sexuality is either the only really fully healthy sexuality is either celibacy or committed monogamy. This is why I believe the Buddha advocates for not clinging to any views. The idea is also supported by Kurt Gödel's incompleteness theorem. I'm not sure at all what you're referring. I know what Gödel's theorem is, but I'm not sure what you seem to be referring to. Something else there. Oh, I don't see the context of your question. I'm missing something. Okay, let's go on. Sakra was building a grandiose palace that can house thousands of apsaras when he boasted about Moggallana, who subtly reminded him of impermanence of his palace. Can the Deva from Nimanarati replicate Sakra's palace down to the smallest detail, including clones of the apsaras that are not sentient? Yeah, well, in theory he could. They can create anything they like. So I don't see why they couldn't do that. Are there noticeable changes in the person that has penetrated the Dhamma, e.g. 3 characteristics? If so, what are they, please? I don't think there's anything that would be absolutely characteristic, defining, but generally that such a person would be more calm, less prone to emotional excitement in general. I think that'd probably be the main thing. What is the most feasible path to Sotapanna for a layperson? Is it even a real possibility? It is a possibility for sure. The way is to follow the Eightfold Path, which means beginning with morality, cleaning up your act, and making, keeping within the bounds of the precepts, and practicing. Then beyond that, practicing meditation, developing some tranquility, and then penetrating reality with the insight of vipassana, which is finally penetrating the nature of reality, requires that kind of disciplined introspection. Okay, now abstract mind is again trying to make an argument for determinism. I think we'll move on from that. You can I just say, in general, the Buddhist teaching doesn't uphold, it upholds causality but not determinism. What could be the cause of rebirth as Mara? He has to create a lot of merit and be a very moral person. He is, so to speak, the main antagonist in the Kamaloka. Yeah, he has, and this is something that Moggallana pointed out in his encounter with Mara. He said, you are. He was complaining. He was, chastising Mara for his misbehavior, and he said, remember, you're a highly advanced Dewa. You shouldn't lower yourself to this kind of behavior. Just because someone has made great merit in the past, which Mara must have done, doesn't mean they're going to continue being moral. And this is one of the traps of samsara, which is the wheel of existence. You can be very moral and well behaved and righteous and take a high rebirth in the heaven realms, and then just totally lose it, just be caught in sensuality or become a troublemaker like Mara, and then take a lower rebirth. Moggallana's story about when he was previous Mara, he tormented the Buddha and the monks of his time, and as a result he was reborn in hell. So he was in Mara at the peak of sense desire realm, then he was in the lowest Naraya being tortured for a long time before he made it back to the human world. Can you tell us a bit more about your time with Ajahn Chah in Thailand? I was never really with Ajahn Chah. By the time, that was before my time. Ajahn Chah, when I arrived in Thailand, he was already very ill, and he wasn't, he was basically unconscious most of the time, and he wasn't teaching or interacting with people, and he died during my first year in Thailand. So I'm not a direct disciple of Ajahn Chah in any way. Is having a very plastic and vivid imagination somehow similar to the experience of these Dewas? Could it indicate one was a Dewa in his past life? It is similar, except that those Dewas actually physically manifest what they imagine. Whether that means you were a Dewa in a past life or not, we don't know, but it's possible. Is there an etiquette when meeting a Buddha in the flesh? Can I shake his hand? No. Grasp his shoulder? No. Can shoulder rub the Buddha's head? No. The way to relate to if you were so blessed, fortunate, had such good karma to come into the presence of a living Buddha, you should rearrange your clothing to bear the right shoulder, and circumambulate him in a clockwise direction, and then bow. They should definitely not make any physical contact. It seems my first message got lost in reference to this is from, I guess, the one that when he was asked about Gödel's theorem. And my first message got lost in reference to the Buddha and Kurt Gödel. I said, all worldviews require some amount of faith, and therefore require to believe something that can't be proven. Yeah, I think that's a good insight. That I think that whatever way you frame your understanding of the world, there's always some element of faith in there, and some kind of assumption made. Okay, I'm going to end pretty soon. I'll see if you answer maybe a couple more questions. Who would you say is the most influential monk on your spiritual journey, and what is the most important thing you learned from that person? Well, there's a number of them, but I would think just personally, someone who is in my whole spiritual journey, I would credit two teachers as having the most influence. The first was Kemananda, my first teacher here at Ara River when I was a layperson. And then when I got to Thailand, Luang Por Pasano, I think was very very influential on me and had a huge influence in my understanding and my development. So I would credit those two before anybody else, although I had many, many teachers. Do monks vote? That's controversial. It's probably better not to, but it's not a hard and fast rule. Okay, I'll just take this last question and we'll call it for the day. Is simply saying I dedicate the merit to my ancestors and feeling happy about it enough for ghosts to benefit from my share of merit? Yes, that's all a share of merit is. You make a conscious intention. May the merit of this deed be shared with my ancestors. That's really about it. Okay, so I'll leave it there, and next time we're going to talk about the Rupa Loka, the realm of the Brahmas. And sorry again, my apologies for the timestamp. I had a bit of a brain glitch, I guess, of putting in, you have to put in the time in 24-hour time, and to make it 6 o'clock you have to, of course, you have to put 1800, and I think I put in 1600 without thinking. Okay.